met Kyle in jail. We met because he offered me his porn magazine.
Come up here and put your hands on the hook.
Because he was his superhuman strength when he's mad.
Hey! Let go!
Come on, Taylor. With me?
And we think this man just murdered somebody. Like, he has somebody's body parts on him. He went into a rage, something happened.
I just didn't.
He was violent, yeah, very violent. Like, he had low patience for anything getting in his way, so if something got in his way and violence was the quickest way to deal with it, he's going to choose violence.
Hey, put your hands up! Put your hands up! Shot first! Shot first! In the alleyway! Show me your hands! Show me your hands! Relax, bro! Put on the ground!
Yeah, I knew Kyle Orth. I'm the one that killed him.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Free on the Inside podcast. It is such an honor to be with you today, and I am so excited to introduce our guest today. He is soon to be making a movie that hopefully you will be able to see very shortly. He's going to tell us more about that today. But today I have with me Kyle Hunter, and he has an amazing testimony that he's going to share with us today and hopefully share more about this incredible movie coming up. So Kyle, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you, and I'm just going to let you share what God's given you today.
Yeah, hey, thank you so much for reaching out. I'm really excited about this. Yeah, I mean, so fasten your seatbelt because we're going to go on a car chase. Yeah, so I'll just start from the beginning. So I grew up in a small town in Iowa. Alcoholic mom, siblings, grew up in chaos. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this can probably relate to that sort of dynamic. We were lucky enough, we grew up on an acreage, and those woods were kind of my saving grace early on. And so I definitely had a place to escape to, and I'm really grateful that I always had a really awesome imagination. And so, yeah, the woods became my escape, and I would just go out there and play cops and robbers and, whatever, soldiers. And man, that was my escape. But my reality of my life was I had a mom who was struggling with a lot of mental health things, and then alcoholism and drug addiction. And so it was a really chaotic upbringing. And I was the youngest of actually there's 7 of us total, but in that household I had an older brother with my mom, an older brother, and then twin sisters that were also older. And my older brother pretty much early on moved to Florida with my grandparents, and my twin sisters moved out. They got adopted by my elementary school principal, Miss White, and I was really jealous of that. I wish I could have gotten taken into that family too, but I would still get to see them because she was my principal and she would bring them in. She was trying to make those things happen for me, and then after my siblings left, my sisters were really my caregivers, and so after they left, things got much worse. And but we eventually moved to a little bit larger city, the Quad Cities in Iowa, and things there. I no longer had that escape, and so I was in a much more urban setting, and we moved there in third grade, and I was really grateful. I had a teacher in third grade who really helped with the transition. Her name was Miss Brown, and so shout out to all the teachers out there who are doing what should be happening at home. And she would see me coming in looking rough, and she would pull me aside, and I would be allowed to like take a bath in the sink in the classroom, and she would feed me and just help me out with things that my mom should have been helping me out with. And so she really filled in the gap and was amazing. But third grade doesn't last forever, and I went on to fourth grade, and my fourth grade teacher was not as spectacular as Miss Brown was, and um, so that transition was really hard. And in fourth grade, I got put into behavioral disorder classes, BD classes, which is weird because like I don't know. I was a really sympathetic, a really nice kid. I was really sweet. In fact, I felt like I felt things more deeply than other kids. Like when people hurt, I hurt. Like I was yeah, really empathetic and just connected with people and just I don't know. I just was a really sensitive kid and wasn't a criminal. I don't know. I just grew up in a really broken home and didn't know how to process things, and so and certainly had never broken the law up to that point. But BD, at least there, like they group the younger kids and the older kids together, and so all of a sudden, like I was grouped in classes with much older students, some of which were breaking the law, and these became my peers. And BD is just kind of at least back then was a place, and at least there was a place where you just kind of sweep the kids so they don't interfere with other people's education. And so then, like pretty quickly, like I started developing, like I started breaking into cars and doing other petty criminal activities, and so that went on for quite a while. But by sixth grade, I had kind of had enough. I kind of started experimenting. I was drinking and experimenting with some pot and some other nothing hard yet. But where I grew up, it was just you could slip through I mean, it was a big enough city where you could just slip through the cracks, and I did, and so it started with just like slipping out of my house. Nobody at home knew or care, and back then, like the truancy laws aren't what they are now, and eventually, like I just was fully not living at home. I was living with other people and kind of running the streets, and this is by sixth grade, so like by 12, 13 years old, I was out of there, and then gradually, like I just became more and more feral, and was living on the streets, and was comfortable living outside, especially like during the summer. So like I was homeless by the age of 13, 14, and kind of loved it. It quickly became all I knew, and so I kind of bounced around. Well, eventually, about 2 years into that, a girl's mom was like, "Hey, what do you think about me trying to figure out where your dad is?" And I never really had a relationship with him, and I'm like, "Well, you can try." Like, his last name's Orth. That's about all I know from him. I think he lives in another town not too far from there, and I don't know. She was resourceful because she hunted him down, and so she made this connection, and so I met my dad really for the first time, and we had a little bit of relationships when I was little, but really for the first time, I met him at Five Points in Davenport, which is like a really bad part of the Quad Cities. And I had a Hardee's, and it was late at night, and I don't know, like I don't even know how he did it, but he convinced me to come home with him. And he lived in a really small town, and where it was much harder almost impossible to slip through the cracks. And so, like, we tried doing the school thing, and I was kind of too far gone at that point. Like, I'd been living on the streets for 2 years and drinking and using and running and gunning, and so that lasted about about 3 weeks, and I was mad and frustrated. The school was mad and frustrated, and they were unequipped, and so, but I was willing, ready and willing just to go back to Quad Cities, but that wasn't an option. Like now it was known in a smaller system, and so I wound up in some shelters and placements, and would run away from those. And I made the mistake in one of them of telling staff that I was like hearing voices and stuff, but I thought it would like get me out of trouble, but it only wound me up in deeper trouble, like in like more restrictive things. So yeah, don't do that. And and then it becomes like part of your record, and that's like you don't want that. And so, but I didn't know that, and I wound up in a placement in a college town, Ames, Iowa, and that placement was wild. Like it was mostly ran by, um, I was like I was like at that point like 16, 17, and it was really ran by like freshman college girls, so girls like not too far in age from us, and there was a lot of things that went on there that today would be a much bigger deal. Back then, nobody really seemed to care or know, and and so I was in placement, but it was like to me it was like awesome, and so that went on for a long time, and so um, yeah, so um, I ended up graduating that and went into a foster home there. One of the girls I was in a relationship with there, they wanted me to testify against her, and I wasn't willing to do that. And so they were trying to put me into a different placement because of that. And I just ran. She paid for my bus ticket back to the Quad Cities, and I just, so I dipped out. And so I'm back to being homeless in Davenport, and so I'm definitely 16 at this point. And we ended up breaking into a house and stealing some guns in that house. Me and a guy named Billy, and we ended up selling those guns to another person, and that person used those guns in a drive-by shooting that ended up killing a little girl. And we got arrested for that. So all three of us got arrested for that, even though I wasn't there, and I certainly didn't pull the trigger. I got arrested for first degree murder when I was 16, and that was scary. And so I'm in detention center. I'm like, oh, well, my life's over. I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. Well, simultaneously, my dad passes away, and I'm allowed to go to his funeral, and he was in the Air Force, and so he's buried on Arsenal Island, which is a base in around Quad Cities. And so I went to my dad's funeral on this military base, escorted by two Scott County sheriffs and two military police officers. So here I am, 16 years old, an orange jumpsuit, handcuffed and shackled, and I have a police escort or sheriff escort and a military escort. I mean, I look like Hannibal Lecter at my dad's funeral. Funeral. And so I was lucky. The judge had some sympathy over me, and he kind of saw it for what it was. And so I got found guilty of some things like the burglary, and it was like a first degree burglary and some other stuff. I was still a minor. And so with my dad dying, like he allowed it to stay juvenile, which I was lucky because the prosecutor was not trying to allow it to stay juvenile. And so I ended up going to a boot camp academy on the other side of the state, and I was there for about a year, a few months before I turned 18. Well, my dad must have been collecting Social Security or something. He had some government benefits, and because he passed and I was still a minor, like this was um, like going into a pot for me. And so when I got out, like I had a little over $20,000. And to me, that felt like $1 million. So I'm 17 years old. I'm handed this, it was like 28 grand. And I felt like a millionaire. I certainly wasn't ready for it or equipped for it. But I got out, I moved in with a girl and in Cedar Rapids, which is near where I live now. And I was able to get my own apartment because I was willing to pay the entire lease up front. I had the money to do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have rented me because I was a minor. And my apartment became the place. And so, like for the first time, like I felt like I was the dude. So I had everything, and so it became the party house, and that was, I felt like that was a lot of fun, and it felt really good to feel like I was somebody. And so, but mainly it was like I was like the only kid who had car and a place to crash, and that money, like, so 28 grand isn't $1 million, and so it ran up very quickly, and so I went right back to what I knew, and so being a guy I knew. We started breaking into houses and got pretty good about at it, and had what we felt like a good system, and that was going really well. I mean, like we had broken in just a couple months, we had broken into like 60 houses, and that was really profitable for us. And until so there's like no good house to break into, but there's definitely the wrong houses to break into, and I broke into the wrong house. The wrong house was Bob Peruska. He was a Jones County district attorney, and so I broke into a prosecutor's house. And when you like break into a house, some people are looking for you. When you break into the DA's house, the entire world is looking for you. So I got the ATF, FBI. I mean, everybody on earth is looking for this. And I don't know, like they must have had like some like informants or something that was informing them wrong, because when we finally got arrested, like they were like questioning me really hard. They thought I was part of some like 9-man crew out of St. Louis, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know 9 people. And so, anyways, so that was wild. And I end up getting 15 years out of that, but it got suspended with placement at the work release. And I was at the work release for 30 days, ended up breaking into 13 more houses while at the homeless shelter, or at the halfway house. And in the last one, I ended up getting hurt really bad. And so there was no getting out of it. Almost like I got like the ambulance came to the house I broke into because I had severed my leg, and but in between there, I had gotten a girl pregnant, and so I was on my way to prison. Found out she was pregnant while I was in jail, and that was a whole thing. But I ended up going in. That was the first time I did like 3 years. Got out on probation, didn't know, or on parole, didn't know what I was doing. Only lasted maybe 5 or 6 months. Violated again with another burglary, and basically from 18 to 25, I'd get out for 2 or 3 months, go back in for 2 or 3 years, get out for 2 or 3 months. So I went in 5 times in that time period, and then brings us to so it would have been 2013. It was January 3rd, 2013. I get out, and I'd finally discharged a 15-year sentence, and so I was free, like free. The first time I've been truly free, no probation, no parole, in my entire adult life. And they give me $100, and they drive me to the bus station to Cedar Rapids, and I have all the emotions going. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I'm also scared to death. It's cold out. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know anybody anymore. I don't have any family or anybody to help me out. And so all those emotions, I get dropped off, and I just kind of spend my first few days just wandering around downtown, being homeless. And I had kind of knew how to be homeless from when I was a kid, and so that first week was really hard. Um, like almost to the point where I thought I was going to freeze to death. I just remember so I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have a social security card. I couldn't get a social security card without an ID. I couldn't get an ID without a social security card. Like I didn't know how I was going to get a job. Like it was just really frustrating. And so like my mind automatically goes back to like, well, screw it. I'll just go back to what I know, crime. Um, and so like, I'm eating out dumpsters, the whole 10 yards. And like, you got to be awake, um, um, at night, and sleeping during the day, so you're less likely to freeze. And it's like, how are you going to find a job and resources? And it was just a mess. And like I'd never been like free as an adult, so I don't even know how to ride the buses, and it just was like super overwhelming for me and challenging. And eventually some other homeless people connected me with a mission of hope. And I wasn't a believer, but like they offered some meals, and that really helped. And then they had a homeless shelter that there was a waiting list, so I had to wait to get in it, but eventually I got into it, and I was there for about 2 months. And they offered me like an RA position there where like I would work third shift, but they would like instead of paying me, they would just give me a room that was like my own. And so I finally had a room. I finally had, and they gave you a little bit of money, but like most of your money went towards the rent. And so it gave me a place to like kind of get rolling, And but I'm not a believer, and but I'm overseeing a Christian halfway house or homeless shelter, and at some point there was a guy who when I was in that placement in Ames was like my AA sponsor or something, and he was a car salesman, and I remember thinking about car salesmen, like I just thought he was the coolest dude in the world, and I was just like. I don't know. I helped like car salesman, doctor on like the same level. Like I just was really distorted, and I just remember like being at this homeless shelter, just kind of thinking about the future. And I had read some like self help books in prison, and like everybody like in all the self help books, I was like if you don't have a lot of skill set and you don't know how to do anything, but you want to make a good income, get into sales. Like is like what books in prison I was reading were pointing at. I was like, all right, I'm gonna be a car salesman. And so, so I dug through the clothes closet. I found what I thought was a dress clothes, but I looked like a clown. I had like a '70s like pointed collar, yellow like striped shirt. It was like three sizes too big for me. Same thing with the pants. I was wearing these like corduroy pants that were like three sizes too big for me. I had this corded belt that went around me like three times. I had my white prison sneakers, but I thought I looked good. And I was like, all right, where's there a car lot? And I kind of knew where one was. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go in there. And it was a big car lot. They had four franchises. It was Ford, BMW, Mitsubishi, and Hyundai. And so it was a really big store. I mean, probably had I don't know 800 cars on their lot and walk up there. There's a receptionist. She's kind of looking at me strange. And I'm like, I'm here to apply for a job. And she's like, really? Like, we sell new BMWs here. Like, and anyway, so the general manager just happened to be walking by, and his name was Paul. And he was like, well, come to my office. And so I sit down with him. He's like, he's kind of interviewing me, and I'm just like excited and enthusiastic. I'm like, I felt like I could do anything. And he's like, well, did you play any sports in high school? And I'm like, nope, I didn't even go to high school. And he's like, oh, well, you kind of got to have a high school diploma. We do sell, we do financing and, like you kind of got to know. And I'm like, oh, okay. And we talk some more. He's like, well, you don't have like any vices or been to prison or anything. Or you charged? Like, no, I've been in prison 5 times. I got 58 felonies, 100 misdemeanors. He's like, oh, yeah, we don't. I mean, we don't hire felons. Like you said, we sell new BMWs. Like you can't. We talk some more. He's like, well, you at least got a driver's license, and I'm like, dude, I don't even have an ID. Like I don't. I've never had a driver's license. He's like, well, how are you going to sell cars? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, well, dude, like what? Like you had to have known I wasn't going to hire you. And like, why'd you walk all the way up here? And I looked him in the eyes, and I said, because Paul, every single day you don't hire me, your company's losing money. And he believed me. He hired me. Yeah, and there's 17 salespeople. I started the very next day. They had given me a small sign-on bonus. I don't know if they did that for everybody or if he was like, "Come on, dude, you need some clothes."
Right.
And so, but the little bit of money he gave me, I went, and bought clothes. All the wrong clothes. It turns out, like I bought what I thought was nice, but they weren't. Like I bought like super skinny ties and all this dumb stuff. And but none of that mattered. Like I just showed up and I was just hit the ground running and I was just excited. And my second day there, I sold a car, and it was really bad because I didn't know the difference between a Honda and a Hyundai. And so, like somebody walked in and they're like, "Hey, I'd like to look at one of these Hyundais," and I'm like, "Okay." So I thought that was the same thing as a Honda. I'm trying to think of any Hondas I know that I was like, "Okay, you're thinking like a Civic," and they're like, "No, you're like in a completely wrong brand." But anyways, I ended up selling the car, and my first month there, I sold 7 cars, which didn't put me in last place. My second month there, I sold 21 cars, which put me in third place. By my third month, I had sold 27 cars, which put me in first place, and I remained in first place for the next 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and so Was really good at that. Was starting to make some really good money forever. Like first time, I was making six figures, and they give you a car to drive. And so I was still living in a homeless shelter when I got my first BMW demo. And so I'm driving a brand new BMW back and forth to the homeless shelter, which is pretty wild. And
Yeah.
and so, anyways, like I'm rocking and rolling, I'm making all this money, but like secretly, like not even secretly, it was pretty obvious. Like I'm just falling apart. Like I started getting harder drugs. Like I like stimulants. I was a sales guy. I wanted to go faster, and so so it started with Adderall, and then abusing other people's prescription of Adderall, and then I went to cocaine, and it stayed with cocaine in that season of my life. But like it was, so I was just um, I had a huge ego, and my character was garbage, and I was filling this void with everything, like unhealthy relationships with girls, and um, just trying to fill this void with anything I could. And anyway, so things got worse and worse and worse, and I got like more manic, like by the day, like my spending, everything. Like there was months where I was making over $30,000, and but like by the second week of the next month, like I was borrowing money from people, like because I was just going through it so quickly, and like just paying for bar tabs and just being stupid, and but just trying to, like, I wanted people to like me, and this is the first time, and I didn't have family, so I had this orphan spirit, and so I was trying to get validation any way I could, and I also felt really insecure because um I was a top performer there, but I never felt like it. Like I felt like other people looked down on me, like people regularly would say like that was just lucky that I'm like, well, I'm lucky month over month. And so but anyway, so anyways, all this like came to a boil, like it came to a point, and just a few months before that ended, I had a pastor friend who I worked out with, but again, I wasn't a Christian. But he just happened to be a pastor, and we like to work out together. He said, and I'm telling him about all this stuff and girls and all that, and he's just kind of looking at me while we're working out, and he said, Kyle, mark my words, your talent is going to take you someplace your character can't keep you. And that didn't mean anything to me at the time. I thought he was a hater. I thought like, oh, you don't get it. So I just wrote that off. But those words later on, not too far off, would haunt me. And so one night, I'm driving around. I'm in a brand new BMW M4, which is like the one of the fastest production cars on the planet. It's orange on orange. I thought I had the world, uh, by the tail, and I'm out showing off for a girl. That I mean, I'll just say, I mean, she was a prostitute, and so like I'm trying to show off for her, and I don't know why, because I think that was a sure thing. I think that's how that works. But I'm out showing off for her, and the cops get behind us. I don't stop. And which I had done this a bunch of other times and gotten away, because these are dealer cars, so I don't have plates on it, and the dealership was a close family, so like nobody would tell on you or anything like that if they would come in and ask. And so I'd lost cops before, and so I was just doing that again, and I ended up losing the one cop, and they called off a do not pursue. Well, another cop saw me pull into this alleyway. I just lived in the alleyway on the other side of it, so I was almost in the home stretch. Well, that cop sees me in the alleyway, so I put the car in reverse, and I'm driving like 40 miles an hour in reverse down this alleyway. I hit a telephone pole. Well, the cop blocks me in. I try to drive around the cop car, and these two officers, they open fire. They shoot 26 times. They end up shooting me 3 times. So I get shot through my left arm, my right shoulder, and my left leg. They pull me out of the car. I'm bleeding to death in this alleyway. And before I lose consciousness, I just remember thinking, wow, is this it? Like, is this how I go? And it fades to black, and then I ended up waking up soon after surgery, and they brought me back to life, um, and I almost like wish they hadn't at the time. Like I remember opening my eyes, and I just see a hospital room full of police officers, and like I go to like wipe my face, and I can't. I'm handcuffed to the bed, and I'm like, oh my God, why didn't you just let me die in this alleyway? But believe it or not, so I get taken down to the police station. And actually, I ended up almost dying twice that night. I'm allergic to hydrocodone, and they give me a hydrocodone, and so like I have this like anaphylactic like response to it, and so in the police station, I almost die again. It was a really rough night, and so anyway, so I'm in my wheelchair. I must have ended up falling asleep in my wheelchair, and because by then like the police department was no longer able to investigate it because it was a conflict of interest, and so I was equivalent to internal affairs, was called DCI, and so this DCI agent comes in. His name's Matt, and he ended up being like a really cool dude. And he's like, um, "Hey, can I get you anything? Can I get you breakfast or anything?" I'm like, "No, man. You can tell me what I'm being charged with, and if I'm not being charged with anything, I want to go home." And he's like, "Oh, you could have left hours ago." And I'm like, what? Like, you just shot me 3 times and I can just go home? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, can I get my phone? He's like, well, no, that's part of the investigation. I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to go home? I'm in downtown Cedar Rapids in a wheelchair, in a hospital gown, and, no phone. And he's like, well, I'll have one of my officers drive you home. And so this officer helps me gets me into his cop car, and we drive to my house. And I had a house that basically, like, it was steps, like a lot of steps. It was an old home, old Victorian home, and like there was like 10 steps
Wow.
to get into my house any way you go. And so like, how am I going to do this? And so the cop kind of helps me. Well, I get to the top like step, and I'm like, oh shoot, I have like a bunch of cocaine inside my house, like on like a pile. And I'm like, oh god, like I need help getting in the house, but I can't allow him into my house. And like he sees me like looking really complex. Like, well, what am I going to do? And he's like, so he kind of figured I had something on the other side of the door I didn't want him to see. And so he asked me, he's like, well, do you have any bomb making materials in there? And I'm like, well, no. And he says, well, as long as you don't have any bomb making materials, anything on that other side of the door, I'm going to give you a pass. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, and he said, yeah. And so the cop like opens up the door, and I have this like table full of cocaine on it. And like, so he has to move the table for me so I can wheel my chair through there. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to prison forever. And, but nothing ever came of it. He kept to his word. I never got like my door kicked in or anything. I thought for sure. I mean, cause it was like, 25 years in prison worth of cocaine. And, and, charges did end up coming later on, and but I had a really good lawyer, and that's what I found out then, that man, there's two judicial systems. There's one where when you got money, and there's one when you don't. I've experienced it a lot broke, but this is the first time I could experience it with money. And like there's all of a sudden rules and exceptions and all these things that are available to you that were not, like, so I ended up taking an alpha plead, which is like not a plea you can do when you're poor. Like, and like it and so I ended up just getting probation out of that deal, which is really wild. And it wasn't even probation, it was like unsupervised probation.
Wow.
And so that girl, the prostitute that I was telling you about, like she kind of stuck around, and because we thought we were going to get a settlement out of this deal. And so we kind of like, after like a month or two, I asked her, I'm like, hey, so do you just live here now? and and she's like, yeah, I guess. Like, I'm like, okay. So she moved in, and we kind of started dating, and um yeah, and so the next 2 years just became chaos. In fact, it got so bad we're not even going to talk about it, because I don't want to glorify anything. But I got into a criminal enterprise that honestly I should probably be serving the rest of my life in prison for, and but let's fast forward 2 years, and then I became an intravenous meth addict, and it was, things got really bad and they got really dark. But fast forward to 2018. It was New Year's Day 2018. I'm in a hotel room involved in this enterprise, and and I have everything. We're making $10,000 or $15,000 a week, and I'm driving a 5 Series BMW, and the girls, and like the whole 10 yards. And like I just remember like sitting on the floor of we're staying at a really nice hotel, and I just remember just sitting on the floor, just thinking like, oh my God, will this ever end? Like, and I'm like living a dream. Like I'm living like on paper, like everybody I knew would kill for this lifestyle, and I just remember thinking I could just kill myself, like, and so. Um, 2 weeks later, I ended up getting arrested, and I had to been being investigated by the FBI just because of everything I was involved in. And I'm sure the FBI was mad when local PD arrested me for a small amount of meth. Like it was like less than a gram of meth, and so like I get a 2 year sentence when I should have gotten a life sentence. And I was. You would think I would have been grateful, but I wasn't. I was really mad, and withdrawals were awful. I'd been intravenously using meth, and like I had the means to do a lot, and so like it was awful. And I was so angry, and so but on a 2 year sentence in Iowa, at least, usually you can discharge that in 10 months, or yeah, 10 months, and but while in there, I assault a guard. And I ended up getting more time, and so I turned a 2 year. Like I did 2 years on a 2 year sentence, which
Yeah.
is hard to do.
Right.
But I ended up spending 7 months in the hole, and that was the first time like I ever really remember praying. And like so, like I was in like so there was the whole, and I was in they transferred me to Fort Madison, which is Iowa's maximum security prison, and and I might have that might be a record. I don't know if anybody's ever made it to maximum security prison on a 2 year sentence in Iowa, at least. So that's I may be the only one. Um, and so I'm doing 7 months in the hole, and I'm just pacing back and forth, and I start praying, and I remember praying because I had this orphan spirit. I remember praying, God, please give me a good wife with a good family, so that her family would become my family. I pray that over and over and over again, and I wasn't a believer yet, like, but I do believe God heard those prayers. And so I ended up getting out. I discharged that time too. I moved in with this guy who was a believer. He became a mentor of mine years prior. Pretty well off business guy, and he and his wife took me in. But I relapsed right away. Like I went right back to the needle, and like they didn't really like kick me out or anything. They wanted to give me more help, but I just didn't want to be around. Like I just felt like I let them down, and I took off, and I wound up in a trap house in a small town outside of there. And now here's the fun part. All that stuff I hate talking about all that, but it's just part of the journey. But so here's the fun part. And so I've been up for 10 days, losing my mind. I started Googling these weird things like, because people have been planting these seeds my whole life. And I remember, so I was Googling, like, if you don't believe Jesus is God, are you just screwed? Which is like a stupid thing to Google, but I did. And like these weird things came back, like they were cliches, like faith it till you make it, like, well, that seems flat. And, but that was like at 3 a.m. I'd been up for 10 days. I was really rough, really sick. And I just remember thinking, man, I need to reach out to that mentor again. His name's Bart. And so I text Bart, and I'd been running around in this stolen Jaguar. And so I tried this stolen Jaguar. He wanted to meet me at this church that has like a cafe that's open all week, and it's called Veritas. And so I drive this stolen Jaguar to this church to meet with Bart, and he knew I had kind of prepped him that I had some like theological questions, and so he had brought this guy who's a pastor at Veritas, and he's kind of like their on staff theologian, although he wouldn't describe him that way, but he is. And so like I walk in, I don't feel like I fit in, like I feel like everybody's staring at me, but that was probably my perception. And I sit down at this table, and like Bart and Richard are talking to me about love and grace and forgiveness, and like none of this is like like I'm coming down. Like I still had a small amount of meth in my pocket and a rig, and like it was all I had left. and so like I'm just kind of like nodding out and like not really able to like focus, and so like I just hop up from the table and I go into the church bathroom, and by then like all my veins had caved in long before that, and so I'm in the bathroom of this church with my shoe off and I'm shooting up in my foot, and my foot's still throbbing as I'm walking back to this table, and I sit down, and now I can like I can at least breathe and focus a little bit because I'm not coming down and so much, and to this day I don't know where this question came from, but I remember like leaning in and asking Richard, I'm like, all right, is it okay if I choose to believe Jesus is God even though none of this makes sense to me? Like, there's like the Trinity, I don't really understand that, and then there's like some guy on a boat with a bunch of animals, like I don't know what that's about, and then like I guess some dude got swallowed by a whale. Like, I don't understand any of this, none of this makes any sense to me, but all I know is that I have this gift of desperation, and I'm willing to try anything. Like, I'm desperate, like it's either this or I'm going to kill myself, and Richard had said in his grand theological wisdom, he's like, yeah, duh, that's what faith is. And it had never occurred to me that faith was a choice. I had always thought faith was like this feeling of absolute certainty, and if you didn't feel absolutely certain, you weren't saved. But it had never occurred to me that you could choose to believe Jesus is God. And Richard was wise enough to say, all right, cool. Let's cement what you just said into prayer. And for the first time, like, I bowed my head and I asked Jesus to be my savior. And I told him, like, none of this makes any sense to me. I don't get any of this, Jesus, but I'm choosing to surrender my life to you. I'm sorry and I repent, and I want to be your son. I put myself under your authority for the first time ever in my life. And that was February of 2020. And that was the first time ever in my entire life where, like, in my life, I was going one direction. Like, I like was pursuing. I wanted to be more manipulative. I wanted to be like more controlling. I pursued power and control. I pursued hedonism. Like, I wanted to feel good. Like, I wanted more parties. I wanted more stories. And then for the first time in my life, like, I just turned around and I started in this other direction. And it was challenging. I mean, like, I accepted Christ, but I was still an intravenous meth user. Like, things didn't just instantly get better for me. But now I had hope, and like, so I started this journey, and like, it didn't my life didn't look like, it wasn't a straight up trajectory, but I started like, like getting, and uh so uh my recovery, like, so I didn't get clean right away. But I got off the needle right away. So I quit shooting up, which doesn't, sound like a big deal, but it was a big deal. And but within like 3 or 4 months, so I relapsed a lot in those first few months, um, because this was all new to me. I'd never really tried recovery. Like, recovery had always been like forced on me, like by being arrested. And But like within 3 or 4 months, I landed like I had this sales skills, but I didn't really want to go back to selling cars, and so I landed a job working at a ministry as a development director, and I really excelled at that. And so, although I was still very new into recovery, I was speaking at churches and getting people excited about giving money into a program that I really believe in, still part of. And and so and then a few months after that, I met my wife, and my wife is amazing. She had been a believer her entire life, comes from a farming family, and she had been preparing herself for her future husband, like right after college. Like, she never dated or anything for 10 years. Has been saving herself for her future husband. I jokingly say, like, God, if I would have set myself aside for 10 years and the best I would have came up with me, like, I feel like, God, I would have been mad if I was her. But she was a director at a Christian ministry pregnancy support center, and just madly in love with Jesus. And we got married 6 months later. And that was challenging because, like, we did everything the right way. Like, we didn't live together or anything, beforehand. And so, like, our wedding day was the first time we spent the night together. And so, like, and I didn't know how to be a husband or anything like that. And so, really, our first year of marriage was really rough. And as I was growing and maturing, um, she went through one relapse with me early on, and which I'm actually grateful for now, because like she just has a different appreciation and perspective of recovery, and she's in a new role where she's the executive director of a large ministry, and they help with some benevolent stuff, and like she has a wonderful perspective, and so looking back, maybe it was a gift, I don't know, but so things in my life started changing in a really radical way, and um, I'm like, I'm even hesitant to talk about this, especially maybe on this platform. But so I do want to like preface this that like, if that's all that would happen for me, like that would have been enough. Like I was set free, but that wasn't where it ended for me. Like 4 years ago, like owning a house was like some far fetched idea that, man, that would be a cool dream. And now we have not only the house we live in, but several rentals. And so that's pretty cool. And actually, ironically, one of the people living in one of our rental properties is a prison guard from the prison I was in. And so he used to house me, but now I house him, which is pretty funny and wild. And really a story of redemption. And I'm a general manager at a car dealership, and I lead a team of 17 people, and which is really wild because 4 years ago I couldn't even lead myself, let alone a team. And we do things way differently here. Like most car dealerships get a bad rap, but because of all this, like we operate at a level of authenticity and honesty and transparency that like even like we're going to do the right thing no matter what, and we really operate with that principle. But and I'm also on city council, which is pretty wild too, because I got 58 felonies, and so all these really wonderful and awesome things, and my marriage is like amazing. Like early on that first year, I was like, God, I just begged that we have a normal marriage, like with like a normal amount of stress and a normal amount of arguing. But then like somewhere like 2 or 3 years ago, like we went past normal and we're on this other side of it, and it's like this is amazing. I love my wife. I love being married to her. Like we have this beautiful little girl, and you know, and being a father when you didn't have that model for you has challenges. But like I'm just really intentional. I read books, I watch podcasts, like I do whatever it takes, because the addiction and the abuse, it ends here.
Yeah.
Like it is not, it's not going, like my daughter will never know that, she'll never see it, it ends here.
Mhm.
And with me, like it will never go beyond this and this tree again.
Mhm.
And so I'm committed to that. And the same thing with marriage. Like my daughter will never know divorce, like she just will never see it, and will not be modeled. And uh and so yeah, so things are rock and rolling. Things are going really good. Uh, at the beginning of this year, like God had put it on my heart to start writing. I was lucky when I was in prison. I was able to take some college courses, and not just any college courses. Grinnell College, which is a really good 4 year private school in Iowa. Uh, uh, like where writing is just drilled into you. Classes were offered, and I took them, and I got really good at writing. Like I really enjoyed it, and I had some really great teachers, and so like I just hadn't really, I hadn't had time. I've just been running my, since I'd gotten out, but I finally got to this place where I wasn't in chaos, and so I'm like, all right, I think I can write again, and I really enjoyed that. And I started posting some of those things, and those did really well. And I had this guy out of nowhere. His name's Tej, who reached out, and he was like, he's a filmmaker, and like a really good, like he's worked on some really big projects. Like you've seen films done in Hollywood that he's done. Like he's a big, like, yeah, and Oxford graduate, like just an incredibly, and he loves Jesus, like emphatically. Like, and he had reached out to me, and he's like, hey dude, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but I think I'm supposed to make a movie about your life. And I'm like, what? I don't know, man. And things are going really good, and I just don't want to open up any like past hurts. And I hurt a lot of people, and like not everybody is on the Kyle Hunter train, you know? And so it's just like, I got a lot of good things going, and I don't want to like stir things up. I'm sure the enemy won't like this thing. And um, so I was like, my wife, we need to pray on this. And so we spent 2 months kind of praying about it, and we're like, you know what? We feel like God's in this. And so, because I got to think about my employees, I got to think about my daughter, I got to think about my wife, and like, you know, so we said yes to this project with some reluctance, but like we're like whatever, and like our expectation was low. Like we're like, okay, we're gonna shoot a film, maybe like 30 minutes long. We're gonna stick it on YouTube, like, like who, it's not gonna be that big of a deal. Well, we started Killing Kyle Orth's Facebook page about 5 months ago. In the first 90 days, it had reached 16 million people.
Wow.
Had read those stories, and they had been shared all over the world. Tens of thousands of people commented on it, and like it just really took off in a really big way. And we have a guy who shops films for Netflix who's reached out, and so we don't know yet, but it has the potential of going on Netflix, which is pretty cool, and got to connect with a lot of really awesome Christian musicians and film with them, and that's been pretty awesome. And it's like, this is only 5 months old, and this is like already like blown in this really cool thing. So I have no idea what the future of Killing Kyle Orth, the movie, holds. Is completely in God's hand, but my wife and I were here for it. So, but that's it. That's what I got for you.
Well, I believe God is going to do amazing things with that movie, and with you. He's not done. He's still writing your story, and your wife sounds absolutely amazing. And I'm just so glad that God made our connection so that you could share your story. But before we leave today, Kyle, would you mind praying over the listeners today?
Yeah. So, Heavenly Father, we just we love you, we thank you, we praise you, and I just pray over each and every individual listening to this right now. Father, I remember what it was like, to sit in one of those cells and just be hopeless and have no direction. And so, Father God, I just pray that each and every individual who's just sitting there right now on their bunk, staring at their feet, not knowing what way to go, not to know if they don't know if they should go left or right, they should go up to you, Father God, that they should just surrender their life right now, right here to you, Father. That faith is a choice. They can choose to believe that you are God and that they put their faith and their trust in you. I pray for direction. I pray over their mental health. I pray over that the spirit of addiction breaks right now, right here, in your mighty name. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much. And thank you, listeners and guests, for being back again with us today on the show. As always, if you'd like to reach out to Kyle, you can write to us at Story of Grace Prison Ministry, P.O. Box 13, Lexington, Tennessee, 38351, and we'll be happy to get those letters to him. We are praying for you. We believe in you, and we will see you next time on the Free on the Inside podcast. Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you were blessed by the show. If you would like to reach out to any of our guests, or if you would like to make a personal request for prayer, you can write to us at Story of Grace Prison Ministry, Post Office Box 13, Lexington, Tennessee, 38351. We read every letter and take every request to God in prayer. You are loved and you are seen. We hope you will join us next time on the Free on the Inside podcast. Goodbye.